Zoella, also known as Zoe Sugg, was one of the most influential YouTubers of the mid-2010s in a certain sphere, anyway. I mean, she received countless awards, endless praise, she launched a number of successful businesses, and yet things weren't all sunshine and rainbows at Zoe's peak. So today we're going to be yapping about where Zoe came from, how she rose to the top, and also how her empire eventually crumbled, if it even did. I didn't actually, at the start of the script, I had no idea what was happening with Zoe Sugg. So that's what we're going to find out today. Together we're going to re-explore Zoe's peak and also talk about where she came from, where she go. Now, my little yappy segment at the beginning of this video needs to start with, I was meant to do a deep dive into every single member of the Brit crew. You may have seen that on my community tab, but then I got carried away. I just really can't help myself. I'm so sorry. I started looking into Zoe and I was like, why is this script? Why is it getting longer? So I guess we'll just see where things go from here. If you still want me to talk about the rest of the crew, let me know. If I've like yapped your ear off and you're done with it by the end of this video, then that's fine too. But we're all done moving. As you can tell, completely different background. We painted this room just for you, and also because it looked really bad before, but just for you. We'll work on the background and stuff. Like, we are still unpacking. Oh my goodness, it's been so busy and so like, we're so grateful, of course, but like it's been a lot. And we were just so tired. After we moved in, we got so tired and we were like, what is wrong with us? Because we were staying up late and we were struggling to get up on time in the mornings, and we were like, how is this throwing us off so much? Like, this is bad. And I noticed, I was like, the clock in the lounge, it's off by an hour. I was like, that is so weird. How did we mess that up so badly? Oh well. Yeah, it turns out daylight savings just passed us by, and it just didn't click to us until Josh got teased today. He got teased in a meeting, which he called me in the middle of because this shook him so badly. But he was like, do you know why we've been so tired? Because daylight savings passed and I had no idea, and then I got made fun of at work, and I was like, oh my goodness, that makes so much sense. Yeah, we literally lost, what did we do? We lost an hour, and we just had I genuinely didn't pick up my phone for so long. Anyway, oh, I almost forgot, my accent, this is a frequently asked question, my accent is a New Zealand accent, I'm a Kiwi. But moving on to Zoe Sugg. Now, Zoe, she was born on the 28th of March 1990, and she was born in Wiltshire, which I don't think I even have to tell you is in the UK, because Wiltshire, it speaks for itself. She was born in Wiltshire. But Zoe she was a sweet, curly-haired child. She grew up in, actually not Wiltshire, she grew up in a tiny little village, it was called Laycock, and she was raised alongside her younger brother Joseph there, so together Zoe's family made up like 4 out of 1,000 of the entire population. Like, this was a really small place, but even though she was raised on this tiny little dot on the map, it actually provided Zoe with a really cool opportunity as a kid, which you wouldn't expect. But it turns out that a lot of the classroom scenes in Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, they were filmed in this really gorgeous place in Laycock called Laycock Abbey, and so she got to be an extra in that movie, which is pretty neat. I really felt like I was in danger when I started writing this script, because I was like, oh no. I was reading Laycock is spelt L-A-C-O-C-K, and I was like, well, there's just no nice way to say that, is there? I was reading it as like La Coque in my head, like a French person presenting a rooster, like Le Coq, that's how I was reading it. And I was like, I guarantee you, not only am I saying this wrong, but I fear that I'm saying it phallic. Like, I don't think it's meant to be said like that. And I was so wrong. It was Laycock. Laycock. Thank goodness, because I don't want to start the whole video saying Zoella was born in Laycock. Imagine if I didn't look that up. That would be so embarrassing. Anyway, so Zoe, she began to suffer from anxiety and panic attacks at the age of 14, but she did sort of enjoy her life as a schoolgirl as a whole, regardless of that. She had a group of friends, she had routine in her life, but it was when her studies ended that Zoe started feeling, she felt a bit aimless. And her anxiety, it grew to impede her life even more when socializing and just like leaving the house. It wasn't a regimented part of her schedule anymore. She had to go out and do it herself. You know, she was used to showing up to school every day and interacting with less than 100 people that she was all familiar with, and then everything changed, you know? Suddenly she had to, if she wanted to go out and see people, just the culture in the UK, I suppose, she had to sort of blend into big groups of people at places like bars and clubs, and she wasn't really used to that. And the thing was, Zoe actually had her first panic attack at a party. She was surrounded by drunk people, and all she wanted to do was escape. She wanted to leave, but she couldn't. So going out on the town probably wasn't her idea of a good time. It wasn't her favorite thing to do when she was younger. So she was struggling with that, but of course life goes on. So Zoe started to sort of feel out her interests. She tried to find her path in life. And she did get involved in a few things. She first acted as an interior design assistant or intern, I suppose. I think assistant, I'm not sure. But then she got a retail job next up. She got a job at New Look. And just nothing she was doing really felt right to her. And of course, like, she had anxiety. So convincing yourself to do anything when your anxiety is telling you that it's the last thing that you should be doing, it's hard. And so it was just like a never-ending battle, especially because she was working these like unfulfilling jobs. Dragging yourself out of bed in the morning is bad enough when you don't have anxiety and you're working a job you hate, you know. But luckily, Zoe did have an escape. As we know now, you know, despite her reservations about existing within large groups of people, Zoe did quickly find that she actually loved to share tidbits from her life, like what she was doing and what she was thinking online. It was like her escape from the scary real world. It was a safe place for Zoe to express herself. It was like she was talking to everyone and no one at the same time, you know. And so Zoe to YouTube, I suppose she was like it was like a fruit fly to fruit, which is not very nice imagery. I'm just trying to, how do I paint I'm like trying to say Zoe was born for YouTube. She was born to be on YouTube. I mean, she was vlogging before vlogging was even a thing. She did a vlog in like 2001.
I'm about to pack for my holidays. Okay, so what I'm going to pack is, I've sorted some clothes out. Here comes trouble t-shirt.
A true pioneer. But like what I'm saying is Zoe's place was YouTube. It just provided the perfect conditions for Zoe to flourish in, but she couldn't have known that at the time. Nobody could have. Even when Zoe created her YouTube channel, which she named Zoella 280390. I'll give you a gold star if you can figure out where those numbers come from. But when she created that channel in 2007, there is no way that she could have foreseen what the platform had in store for her. Like, genuinely no way. Because back then, YouTube was like solely for fun. It was just a fun thing to do, because now it's all about the grind. You know what I mean? It's about the hustle, baby. Like, do you want to make $1 million in 30 days? Oh, I have just the course for you. But back then, YouTube really was about creating just for the sake of creation. You know, it was about creating and connecting, and it was just meant to be fun. But I guess none of those things really called to Zoe when she first made her YouTube account in 2007, because her channel lay dormant for a few years, actually. She didn't post until like December 2009, or I think that was her first public post that she left up. But Zoe did start sharing her thoughts on what was happening in her life and stuff like that to an audience online much earlier than that. Because prior to December of 2009, Zoe had opened a blog, and this is what she had to say about her first endeavor into the blogging world.
My first blog post was written in 2009. I think it was January or February. It's not there anymore because I deleted it because it was absolutely not relevant to anything else that I wrote about. But it was about the cast of Skins, and I basically just discussed how hot I thought they were. I don't know why I thought that was going to be a great introductory blog post, but I did, and I wrote that.
But after that, she was inspired to continue posting about things other than hot celebs. She ended up sharing the Lush products that her boyfriend at the time got her for Valentine's Day in a blog post, and that tied in a lot more fittingly with like the beauty and fashion brand that she eventually went on to build, so I guess that's notable. So a lot of people actually thought that this was Zoe's first ever blog post. It wasn't, it was just the first public one. But anyway, the blog post was entitled, I Love Lush. So obviously her boyfriend knew her very well. But I guess Zoella doesn't do free endorsements anymore because you cannot find the blog post just in its true original form. It's archived now, and if you squint past the interesting formatting, you can almost offer some insight into what she was compelled to speak about. Basically what I gathered, I literally copy pasted this into like a Word doc. But Zoe was gifted the Heavenly Massage Bar and Yummy 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 from Lush, of course, and they thoroughly impressed her, these products did, and so she went and did more shopping at Lush herself afterwards. Because as she said, Zoe loves all things materialistic. She always had. She loves a good shop. I'm not sitting on this chair next time. I'm sitting on my nice blue chair. This one's out to get me. But Zoe's interest, I guess, in all things materialistic, it paid off majorly for her. Because that blog that Zoe had going on, oh, it did so well for her. Like, she was making a name for herself. She was posting almost daily about just literally things that she was doing. She would attend car boot sales and talk about it, or she'd review things that she'd bought, just tell her readers what she thought, and they loved it. People were showing up. Zoe, she really had a passion for all things like makeup and fashion, and that passion, it just bled into the things that she shared, and it resonated with people. There were these like-minded people that kept coming back. They started to fill the seats in her grandstand, if you will. She was really growing an audience. But then eventually Zoe decided to like branch out, I suppose, from the written word into the spoken word, and that's when she finally utilized the YouTube channel that she'd made back in 2007. I'm not sure when she actually started posting. She said that her first first ever videos were actually vlogs that were wiped from the internet pretty soon into Zoella's like career online, because she said that she kind of just made those vlogs because she didn't actually know what route she wanted to take her channel down. So she was like, do I make chatty videos or makeup videos? And then as indecision goes, she just chose to do none of the above to make it easier. She was like, I'll just vlog. But then I guess Zoe's first video that actually felt relevant enough to her brand that it did stay up on her channel, well, for quite some time anyway, she posted it on the 17th of December 2009, and it was entitled 60 Things in My Bedroom. Sounds like Zoella. Now, I do have like a vague memory of finding this video and watching it with my own two eyes at some point in time, but alas, it has since been removed from public viewing from the Zoella YouTube page. And yet, because as we know, nothing is truly erased from the internet, it still exists. Just recorded on Bandicam, re-uploaded on some random person's channel. Amazing. So, I can tell you exactly what happens in this video. Zoella, it's basically her, like, showing off ancient artifacts from the Jurassic Age that she kept in her bedroom back then. Like, she showed off brick phones and DVDs, crazy stuff. But all in all, in seriousness, this video is a very amateur video, but it's charming. Do you know what I mean? This video is cute. Zoella girl, she's got some potential, you know? Like, I think she'll go on to do big things. But Zoe really, she just connected so well with a subsection of people on the internet. Like, she served that community so well that they just like flocked to her. And the more she shared, you know, like she'd post videos answering personal questions and showing her audience her home and her routines and her belongings, even her roof thatching brother. She was like, have a look, here you go. I don't know, it was like the more that Zoe let her audience into her life, the more dedicated viewers she amassed. It felt like she was almost building an audience of best friends. She just felt so real. And back then YouTube was so personal and so casual, and the boundaries were like almost dangerously lax. But Zoe, she continued blogging for pretty much the entire span of her YouTube. Well, we'll talk about that. But basically, like, the two ventures, at first, they really bolstered each other. So, for example, Zoe's blog, that pulled in a substantial number of readers. It won awards. It got Zoe invited to events. It was kind of a big deal. And then Zoe would post these YouTube videos talking about how she made her blog so successful. Or I guess you could say successful, because her last name is Sug. But basically, Zoe had those two things working in tandem, and it was paying off really, really well. And also, in around 2010, Zoe started making connections in the industry that would last for quite some time. It all began when there was this nice girl called Louise. She reached out to Zoe, and she was like, girl, I love your blog. And Zoe basically was like, perfect, amazing, let's be best friends. I think that's what this calls for. And it just all went from there. So then the next year in 2011, Zoe collaborated with Louise, who we know is from Sprinkle of Glitter fame, in a YouTube video. It was all about how to run a successful blog page, I think. So publicly, Zoe and Louise seemed pretty close. They even formed Zoella together. Yeah, which I know sounds like a ship name, but to be clear, it was just a brand of makeup brushes. I was just trying to make it sound exciting. But it was cool to me that they released a brand of makeup brushes in 2012. Like, all of these cliched things, right, that we see as like boring and standard and oversaturated now, they had to be done for a first time. Somebody had to start the trend or like discover this lucrative business venture that everyone ended up jumping on. And I mean, I'm not saying by any means that Zoe and Louise were the first YouTubers to monetize their platforms or to build like a business around their online presence. And actually by 2012, the partner program was in full swing. Like, there was this ABC News article that I found that detailed how thousands of creators were making six figures on the platform and how they were able to treat their online presence as a business now because of it. Like, they were really selling it. And they used Michelle Phan as an example because she'd already turned her video making hobby into a prosperous brand by that point. And she's still around now, which is pretty cool. But yeah, I guess it's just pretty neat because things were starting to happen. Like, things were changing. It feels like this was sort of the first wave of people like feeling their way through the darkness in terms of using YouTube as like a jumping off point for bigger things. I mean, these YouTubers, which was like a very new title, they were out here, they were hiring managers and joining with shady networks and all sorts. It was like the wild, wild west out there. And not to like foreshadow or anything, but it did just go further and further, didn't it? It was to the point where YouTubers were stumbling their ways into Hollywood. They were releasing TV shows and movies and getting book deals, and all just thanks to the name and the brand that they built around themselves on this silly little platform called YouTube. Like, it's just weird that we saw that happen in our lifetime. But anyway, not me jumping ahead quite far. Back to the point. At this stage, Zoe, she was making a real effort, I guess, to turn her platforms into a fully fledged, sustainable business. Like, she was seeing the potential in YouTube now. It wasn't her job yet, but she was vying for it. She was like lining herself up for it, and yet she was still marketing herself to her viewers as just Zoe, like girl next door, bestie for the restie Zoe, which was really smart. The fact that Zoe wasn't selling herself as a product or a businesswoman was so clever, because she was just seen as being so trustworthy and so personable and so real, and that really helped her in the long run. But her brand, it formed quickly and easily for Zoe. I don't know if it was thought through or if it just came naturally for her, like a puzzle piece slotting into place, because that's really what it seems like. She never seemed to like struggle with her image in that way. But things were really looking up for Zoe around 2012. She'd basically found what she'd been searching for, you know, when she was lost back after she finished school. She was looking for a thing and she found it. But even though Zoe's career was going better than she even could have known at the time, there was like, she was staring down the barrel of complete and total YouTube stardom, and she just kind of had no idea. Things in her actual life were a bit turbulent. She'd just initiated a breakup with a boyfriend who was not very nice, and on top of that, her parents had decided to get a divorce after obviously years and years of being together, and it was just stressful. Zoe was just left in tatters. Her panic attacks and her anxiety began to sort of creep back in again, and she was just in full avoidance mode. But Zoe realized that she was letting life pass her by because of these illogical fears that were rolling over her, and this time she thought, like, I'm not just going to sit down and take this, and she started to step out of her comfort zone. So she would say yes to more things, and she was out there investing herself really, really deeply into YouTube. And part of that for her meant connecting with other creators, which wasn't easy for her, especially because it involved traveling a lot of the time, but she was really brave and she did it anyway. And so in the years of 2012 and 2013, Zoe collaborated with quite a few UK-based creators. She collabed with Marcus Butler, Tanya Burr, Jim Chapman, Casper Lee, and notably Pointless Blog as well, Alfie Days, also known as Zoe's boyfriend. We'll get into that more about, well, I was going to make a video about like the Brick Crew relationships and what happened and everything, but we'll see about that. Let me know if you want that. But you may notice that the year of 2012 did mark the insurgence of the Brick Crew. That's when they all started getting together. But importantly for Zoe, especially at this point in her life, it was really this group of people that she went on to achieve so much with, and just alongside in general, they were her friends. She was developing this tight group of friends, and these people shared some of her interests. They understood her lifestyle to an extent, and it just felt safe. It was a safe group of people, and that allowed Zoe to settle into herself a lot more. She realized that around this time her anxiety was actually subsiding pretty substantially because she just had good people around her. She was feeling okay in life. But Zoe still wanted to draw awareness to her condition, her mental condition. She wanted to speak about what it was like to live with a diagnosis like hers, basically. And so on the 8th of November 2012, she sort of broke out of her mold of like beauty and lifestyle tips a little bit to release a video that was entitled Dealing with Panic Attacks and Anxiety. In that video, it was kind of like a scary topic for her to broach to so many people as well, but it ended up resonating with millions of people. This was a defining thing in Zoe's career. So many people saw value in this, like to know that this well put together YouTuber that especially a lot of young girls looked up to know that she was struggling with something that might actually be familiar to a lot of them. It was really comforting. You know, Zoe spoke about how isolating her diagnoses could be, and she touched on how like she ended up reaching her breaking point and when she decided to seek medical attention and how she benefited from that. She gave advice about how she's learned to cope with some of her symptoms and how she pushes through with like positive repetition and basically reminders that she's in control, and just all of that was so helpful to a lot of Zoe's viewers, like the personal anecdotes she was sharing, the explanations that she was sharing. It was great. And I think it just gave people, like Zoe had that safe group of people now, and this video was a safe space for a lot of people, even just to go down the comment section and be able to discuss their own experiences or to read about other people's. That was worth something. So this video really bolstered Zoe in the world of YouTube. People really respected her for making this, but in general, people did just really like her as well. Like, to say that she wasn't doing too shabby on YouTube would be an understatement. She was doing really, really well, actually. By mid-2013, Zoe's channel had surpassed the 1 million subscriber mark, which is huge, especially for 2013. And at that point, she said YouTube had become 100% a viable job for her in her mind. Because at first she started making like 60 pounds every now and again on YouTube, and she was like, well, it's something, but it's nothing big, and you know, this was big. And then before she knew it, Zoe was really facing her fears. She was going out and she was flying across countries, attending like meet and greets and events. She was meeting with other creators overseas as well, like Tyler Oakley, Joey Graceffa. I think she collabed with Grace Helbig. Like, she was busy. She was expanding her circle, but it wasn't all related to traveling. There was stuff happening in the UK as well. Like, she was invited to Summer in the City as a creator, which, watching her vlog from that day, wow, that was a blast from the past. I must say, from one person with anxiety to another, that all of that looks like hell. It looks so overwhelming. I'm glad she's smiling, but oh my goodness, I would not be. But 2013, this was actually a really big year for Zoe. It was also the year that Zoe officially announced her relationship with Alfie Days. I think they started dating in 2012 actually, and we don't really have much time to get into their relationship in this video, but I will say that Zalfie was highly regarded by the fans. A lot of people thought that Zoe and Alfie made a really good couple. They also thought that Alfie just seemed like absolutely smitten with Zoe. At this point, Zoe's career was booming. She was becoming somewhat of a style icon, you could say. Like, there were blogs on websites like Tumblr just dedicated to her clothes and her style, and like you'd see all these Pinterest posts of her gorgeous ombre hair. Zoe was the talk of the town in 2013, okay? She was really, really up and coming. Actually, I found there was this viewer on a gossip site. They shared a glowing review of Zoe. They said, I love her style and how down to earth she seems. I also like how she shops at affordable places like Primark and the High Street. It makes it a lot easier for a poor college student like myself to relate to her. Even though that seemed really positive, I stopped reading after that because perusing gossip sites is like ingesting toxic waste and wondering why your tummy hurts afterwards. Like, it's just a bit of a lost cause. It was interesting to see an opinion piece from that time, an archaeological record from 2013, if you will. A truly magnificent find, I will say. Anyway, I already mentioned that Zoe's blog, it had been recognized with awards in the past, but by this point, it was Zoe's YouTube channel's time to shine. I found this prehistoric video. It showcases the Vamps presenting Zoe with the BBC Radio 1 Teen Award for Best British Vlogger in November of 2013. For some reason, the Vamps did it, even though Dan and Phil were right there. I feel like they would have been better suited for the task, but whatever. But Zoe was there. She collected her award on stage. She did a really short little, I don't know if you could call it a speech. I'll play it for you.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone who voted. This is amazing. Love you.
Thank you.
It's cute, right? But it was very inspiring to a lot of people because they knew her as, you know, the beauty and fashion influencer or whatever with anxiety. And so to see someone who openly struggled with anxiety doing something huge like that, it was a really big thing. It really said something to people, so props to Zoe for that. Although she did later say that traveling was actually scarier for her than doing something like collecting an award on stage. It's funny how stuff like that works, right? Where it's like you can snap into a character and be like, oh yeah, I'll go up in front of thousands of people, no big deal. But then you get on a train and you're like, why can't I breathe? I'm dying. But interestingly, this is where I noticed the conversation really starting of, there were some onlookers that were just shocked that someone who was like, oh, she's just a makeup YouTuber. They were like, how could she win an award like that? But I mean, of course, everyone will have their own opinions and their own interests. Still, the general consensus that I saw in the comment section on that YouTube video of the BBC Radio 1 Awards was that Zoe was more than deserving of her win. She earned that, is what people thought. But this like just a makeup YouTuber sort of dialogue would haunt Zoe for the rest of her days, unfortunately. But still, Zoe had a very dedicated audience. I think it's a testament to the way that she like perfectly catered to the YouTube algorithm at the time, because like nowadays you're kind of told like you got to stick to your niche. You got to pick your niche and stick to it, because otherwise the YouTube algorithm won't know where to recommend your videos to, and then all your videos will die a sad, tragic, untimely death, and it'll just be very sad, so just pick a niche. But Zoe explained from a video around 2013 on her channel that she didn't really fit into one category as such, like she was expecting to when she first started her channel, and she really wasn't wrong. She didn't. Like, she did establish herself as somewhat of a beauty creator initially, but then she broached other topics to the point where Zoe's channels, they mainly revolved around her. She actually is quoted as saying, basically, that the joy of YouTube, she said, is that you can create content about anything that you feel passionate about, however silly the subject matter, and she really did live by that. But I think it worked so well at the time because YouTube back then, to have a successful channel, it relied on you having active and dedicated subscribers a lot more than it does now. It was almost like watching this like really down-to-earth reality show, because you wanted to tune in basically to see what Zoe and her friends were doing. And then of course you'd see her friends, you'd go subscribe to her friends, you were like fully integrating yourself into the friend group is how it felt. It really felt like you were there, like it felt like you had company. So it was a mutually beneficial thing for the the collaborators and the viewers. And it's funny because if you didn't get it, right, like you'd watch Zoe's vlogs or her videos and you'd think like, who cares? This is so boring. Why is anyone watching this? But it was the way that like, if you were in the right place in life at the time, those videos made you feel so involved. Like, you know how mukbangs became a thing because people wanted to feel like they had company when they ate? It was like that. 100% it was like that. These people just felt so normal, and like you knew they were big YouTubers and they were rich or whatever, but they felt so normal and it felt like you were there with them. And I'm sure Zoe knew that as well. Like it's easy to forget how smart a lot of popular YouTubers really are, because yeah, there's a lot of luck involved in becoming huge, but to turn your online presence into a business, you have to be so on it and so forward thinking. And I think Zoe had those traits, and that's what really drove her career hard and fast as she was running with this opportunity. And you can see here this really clever way that she like funneled viewers through to her other channels. Like she knew what worked and she kept doing it too. Nobody can say that Zoe wasn't a hard worker, because I know she wasn't doing like backbreaking labor or anything like that, but that girl pumped out content. Oh my goodness, she was on top of things all the time, and she had all these other ventures. Like she was a really busy woman. So that was 2013. Rolling into 2014, 2014 was an eventful year for Zoe, because 2014 it saw the rise of the fabled YouTuber book epidemic, and we all know how that went for Zoe. But first I want to delve into some positives. At this point, Zoe was living with Alfie in Brighton, so she'd moved to Brighton, and they were going strong still. They adopted a cute wee puppy. Her name was Nala, which I thought was really cute until my friend promptly ruined it for me. She diligently pointed out that it's spelt Nala spelt another word backwards, and I was like, oh, that's lovely, thank you for letting me know. And then in April, Zoe released what would become her most popular video ever. It's sitting at over 20 million views nowadays, and it's entitled 7-Second Challenge with Miranda Sings. Ooh, that's a face you never wanted to see again. But what else happened? Zoe hit 5 million subscribers. She did that in June of 2014. And that's insane, because you may recall that I told you that mid 2013-ish, Zoe hit 1 million subscribers. So growth. Like when I tell you that Zoe was a big deal in like 2013, 2014, oh my god, was she ever. Like I can't even imagine suddenly having an extra 4 million eyes watching literally everything I did, but that was Zoe's reality and she was rolling with it. I don't know how that happened, and she stayed like sane and down to earth, because I truly could not handle Earth. If 5 million people knew who I was, I'd ask to be like, just shoot me into the stars. I can see why Katy Perry did that. And especially like Zoe had anxiety, right? I know I keep bringing this up, but like to me, it's a big factor of my life, is like, what is scary to me? Okay, well, I will not do that. But Zoe was doing really scary things. And it was just the basic stuff. Like she couldn't have a day where she was sort of off out in public, because she was getting recognized everywhere she went. She couldn't have an off day where she like stayed in bed all day, because she was vlogging every single day. She wasn't just an invisible person like most of us are anymore. Like she would like walk down the street and people would be like, oh my god, Zoe. And yet Zoe was still showing up every day, specifically on her More Zoella, her vlog channel. And she was just authentic and open and like her honest self. That's really what it felt like. I know we don't know these people, we can't actually tell if that's her being authentic, but it really seemed like she was. You know, she showed up with little makeup or even no makeup. Maybe I don't wear makeup, so I don't know. At the beginning of her vlogs though, she'd look like she wasn't done up, she wasn't perfect, she didn't cut out her like ums and ahs. She really seemed to express herself to her viewers, and that's admirable, but also a really good business move. Again, smart move. But I'd imagine that it would be quite scary and quite difficult. Like I'd want a boundary, I'd want a guard up, but it really didn't feel like Zoe had that. I don't know, she was becoming more and more exposed, if anything, because she was becoming acquainted with like endless celebrities. She was meeting internet personalities and even the likes of like One Direction. And then she was also participating in traditional media. She was featuring on shows like This Morning, she went on Loose Women, she showed up on Dan and Phil's Radio 1 show, and then Zoe even appeared on the cover of a magazine. She was on Company magazine that year, and she had a whole spread about her, which is pretty neat. But there was this one, you can see here she answers this question. They asked like, what's the downside of vlogging? And she said, so I'd be like having to vlog every day, but she said, the trolls, but I've heard a great saying, never wrestle with a pig, you'll both get dirty, but the pig will love it. Words to live by, queen. And this person, I don't know who to credit because there's no name attached to this, but you can see that they made a graph like outlining how all of these appearances that she did, how they boosted Zoe's channel, and it's so interesting. Every time she appeared on something, the spike went up. So like it's the first graph I've ever seen in my life. Like then it went up and down. But then on top of all of that she was doing like publicly, Zoella was also behind the scenes. She was expanding her brand. She was delving into the creation of her own self-titled Zoella Beauty line. So that was a really big thing for her. But then also she was working on a special project that involved a lot of words that shall not be named yet, but you may know what I'm talking about. And she was still obviously posting very, very regularly on YouTube, so she was busy. And honestly, I feel like staying connected to her fan base was just growing and growing and growing. Staying connected would have been like a full-time job in itself. Responding to comments actually takes a really long time, but I guess it was imperative to her success that she did that. Like she had to feel like a friend to her viewers. It was kind of what her whole career was built around, and her vlogs did a lot of the heavy lifting with that, but she did a little bit more. Like she'd do Q&As, she'd frequently respond to comments. It was just like staying involved, staying tethered to her community, I guess. And Zoe's strong connection to her audience, not only did it pay off, but it was also very, very obvious. She was voted to be the winner of the BBC Radio 1 Teen Awards for Best British Vlogger. I really struggle saying that. But she was voted to be the winner of that for the second year in a row in 2014. This time, her award was presented by Nick Jonas. Oh, it just cracks me up. Even the memory of it is cracking me up. Zoe walked out to bang, 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 bang into the room, and she had this to say.
Oh my goodness! Hi! I can't believe I've won this for the second year. This is amazing! Thank you so much to all of you who have voted for me. I love you all so much. This means so much. Thank you very much.
It seems like her confidence just skyrocketed in the past year alone. But this 2-minute clip, I just have to say this, it had me hooked. Every single second of it. Like, I'm almost glad that I didn't know that this happened at the time so that I could truly appreciate it now at my big age. Like, watching I didn't know it was possible to feel nostalgic for something that you weren't even there for, but this was the era, okay? This was the moment. I genuinely think 2014 is the year that I will never be able to, like, mentally let go of. I want to live in 2014 forever. That's my year. That's my nostalgic year. It's just so funny. Even thinking about it is making me laugh. But on the subject of winning stuff, let me continue. Zoe also won the Webstar for Fashion and Beauty Award at the Teen Choice Awards, something like that. I can't really remember. And then also, what was it? Nickelodeon's Kids Choice. She won UK's favourite vlogger of 2014. Yeah, so she was winning lots of stuff. But nothing is perfect. And Zoe's life definitely was not perfect. Nobody's is. So she released a video, I think it was in August of 2014, and it was entitled Sometimes It All Gets Too Much. And she was crying in this video because she was overwhelmed. And she said, like, despite how grateful she was, you know, she wasn't this, like, perfect, unbothered person that a lot of people thought she was. And she just wanted to share that with her audience, she said, because she didn't want to lead her viewers to believe that, you know, just because she shared like 10-minute highlight reels, basically, of her day, every day. She didn't want people to think that that was all there was to her life. But she did take this video down afterwards. I'd imagine that it was probably a little uncomfortable for her to know that it was up, and I think she did receive a little bit of backlash for it, but I can't really remember. However, on a more positive note, Zoella Beauty officially launched in September of 2014. The crowd went wild for it. The products flew off the shelves. But Zoe documented the launch day of Zoella Beauty in a vlog. She got all dolled up for this very exciting, very balloony launch party. Louise was brought to happy tears. Like, it was all just a very nice moment. And then first impression reviews and stuff like that started popping up, just flooded the internet. The customers were gushing about how these products were like £5 each. I think the most expensive one was £8 maybe. And they were saying that they just felt more lush and more expensive than they really were. And if that doesn't tell you that Zoe really knew her audience at the time, then I don't know what will. She was so aware of her brand at this point. It's honestly impressive. Like, she knew what her audience were looking for. And then in October of 2014, Zoe was named as a digital ambassador for a mental health charity. It was called Mine. And she said she had this like introductory video, and she said that it was something that she was really passionate about, and it was a project that she was like excited to take on. Then in November, she was invited by Bob Geldof. This is kind of random, but she was invited to participate in the Band-Aid 30 track. It was intended to raise money for the Ebola crisis. So they sang an updated version of Do They Know It's Christmas Time? And she did this alongside really big names in music at the time. Like, well, obviously because it was a Band-Aid track, but like One Direction was there, Bono, Rita Ora, Ed Sheeran and Ellie Goulding. Remember they had a thing? That was a whole thing. Ollie Murs, I'm pretty sure I saw Ollie Murs there. Sam Smith was there, and Zoella had previously said that she had Sam Smith playing on repeat, so I think think probably the entire thing actually was just a totally surreal experience and definitely something worthwhile to be a part of. So she was doing, you can't say she wasn't doing anything decent with this like public standing that she had. I think that's pretty cool, all these projects that she was involved in. And then November of 2014, Zoe's channel had grown even further. She was closing in on 7 million subscribers. Mind blowing. But of course, being a very popular woman online, doing something as simple and vapid as vlogging and doing makeup, it was only natural, right, that Zoe was going to face some criticism for making content, I guess, that a lot of people would consider to be like asinine or worthless. And of course people were like, oh, she's only popular because she's so pretty, which is such a backhanded compliment. Like, thanks, I guess. And then some people were even like skeptical of Zoe. They were outwardly concerned about the impact that her internet presence was having on her viewers. There's this article I found entitled The Problem with YouTubers Like Zoella Is, and it's on BuzzFeed. It just outlines how basically Zoe is a marketer who does not in fact live for her followers, as you may expect, which is kind of giving like, you know, when 5-year-olds think their teacher lives at school. They also note on the topic of Zoe being like outspoken about her experiences with anxiety, they said that she's found a way to get even more fame out of it instead of becoming a serious advocate for mental health awareness. And they also go on to say that while nobody can say that she's guilty of calling herself a mental illness guru, she certainly isn't discouraging that view either. And then they assert that Zoe in the end is more concerned with like money and success than anything else really, and they conclude everything with the sentiment, but isn't that true of most people? Others would probably not care either way and continue to support her regardless. In the long run, online, people's true colours eventually show through. It can take years to build success and just moments to destroy it. But the whole article, to me, honestly, I wanted to like sort of highlight some of the criticisms and controversies that Zoella faced along the way, but this one just, it reads as like an incomplete thought that even the author didn't fully believe in, because they didn't really vouch for themselves. They were like, this might be true, but probably not. But the singular comment under the article, it disregards everything that the author laid out, and it just spouts, they said, I for one am sick of her and I think she's a douche canoe. How self-important is she? Narcissism comes to mind. Like, okay, babe. I guess in the end, to me, it's not a crime to not like Zoella, do you know what I mean? But it seems like, well, at this point from what we've read, right, the people who didn't like Zoella, they just didn't like her for like benign reasons, but they tried to turn it into like a moral judgment. Like, oh, I don't like her because she's bad. No, babe, you don't like her because you're not into makeup or whatever. Like, you can just admit that, it's fine. But then there was this article as well, it was on The Independent, written by Chloe Hamilton or something, and she basically said that Zoe's particular brand of sickly sweet girl power brings me out in hives. She compared Zoe's appearance to that of a startled bird, but a gorgeous one. And then she complained that Zoe continues to upload videos to her YouTube channel in which she squeals with excitement over new brands of mascara. And basically Chloe's whole idea here was that it was contradictory, that Zoe would say things like, oh, I wish younger girls would worry less about their image and their appearance, but then she'd make content like my spring/summer hair and makeup, a huge beauty and cosmetics haul, fresh spring makeup tutorial, my everyday makeup routine. And Chloe was like, well, you're encouraging them to care more about their image and their appearance. And she went on to write, she said, if she did away with beauty tutorials altogether and instead used her soapbox solely to speak out about the pressure girls are under to look pretty all the time, or the unfair advantage given to boys who do not need to worry about the latest eyeliner trends, Zoe could become the face of accessible, digestible feminism adored by legions of female fans. Instead, too much of her inane chatter reinforces the age-old premise that women must be beautiful if they are to lead happy lives, and that what we care about above all else is how to do a flawless, festival-ready top knot. Which reads as very misguided to me. I don't know if it's because it might be a cultural thing, because I don't wear makeup and like nobody here cares. Like nobody in my city would be like, Chloe was like, oh, if only Zoe would stop indulging in her passions and ceased doing the things that everyone pays attention to her for, then she'd be so much better. But then nobody would be paying attention to her, Chloe, so it wouldn't matter what she was doing. She'd lose interest, you know? Like, this is kind of what I mean when I say that you do have to be business-minded to be a successful content creator, because you can have the best of intentions and lose everything because you're not playing it right. Do you know what I mean? And also, even off the subject of that, you know, what she should be advocating for, you'll have to fill me in on this if you have memories of this, because I never watched Zoe's like makeup or fashion content. I wasn't into that. But if she did strike the balance of like showing an interest in those things but not being overly obsessive about them, then wouldn't that mean that she was setting a fine example? And I don't know, it does read to me that she was setting a reasonable example because like I said in her vlogs, she didn't show up with like a full face of makeup all the time. Like her life wasn't perfect and she wasn't painting herself in that way. But like I said, I didn't watch her main channel. But I say that because like, I feel like the whole Independent article disregarded the fact that there's actually no issue with finding joy in things like makeup or fashion. Like, it doesn't have to be this awful thing. Because she was like, oh, boys have an unfair advantage because they don't have to worry about the latest eyeliner trends. I have never worried about the latest eyeliner trends. That is not true for every single girl. And also, what about the boys that want to worry about the latest eyeliner trends because they enjoy that? I don't know. I really feel like a lot of the criticisms that I've seen about Zoe and her general internet presence in this era, they were so half-baked. And it really read as like people expecting Zoe to fit their own personal narrative better when Zoe is an individual. Like, she was interested in makeup and also interested in mental health, and like things can be multifaceted. The reality is, right, that Zoe could not appeal to every single person on planet Earth, but she was filling a gap in a market and she was serving up content for consumers that were more than happy to devour it, right? She was doing really well in her space online. Although, with that said, yeah, we're getting to it. We're getting to the thing. Even Zoe's core loyal audience would turn against her in the year of 2014 for possibly the first like widespread poor choice that Zoe had made in the years-long span of her career. To date, anyway, to this point in her timeline. But I guess with the amount of eyes that were on Zoe at this point, it was kind of only a matter of time until she was going to make a very public mistake. And the mistake literally could, when you're that popular, it could be being so likable and so perfect that your audience grows to resent you. That could be your big mistake. But that didn't happen for Zoe. And honestly, her mistake could have been worse. Well, yeah, okay. So what happened is that Zoe, she was having what should have been a very exciting time in her career. It was a monumental step forward for her because Zoe released her first book. It was entitled Girl Online. This was released in November of 2014 and readers loved it. Viewers loved it. And it was quickly met with disapproval. So Zoe, she'd been hyping up the release of this debut novel of hers for quite some time, and fans just jumped on it as soon as they could. They were like, oh my god, it's out, and they bought the book and they read it and they were like, Zoe, I'm so proud of you, you wrote a book. And the sales were crazy too. Girl Online sold, I think it was just over like 78,000 copies in its debut week. She had like the highest first week sales of a debut like first time novelist, which is cool, great. And Zoe was chuffed, to say the least. She put out a statement. She said, it's such an amazing feeling. I'm so grateful to everyone who's bought a copy of Girl Online. I love that so many of my viewers are enjoying the book. This year has been so exciting, and this for sure is the icing on the cake. Don't speak too soon. The success of Girl Online couldn't last forever because there was just one small issue, and that was that Zoe, well, you know, like, they were like, oh my god, she's like the best-selling debut novelist of all time. Well, she wasn't actually really a first-time novelist. So by definition, a novelist is, quote, a writer of novels. And unfortunately, Zoe was not that. She wasn't a writer of a novel, because her novel, Girl Online, it was actually written by a ghostwriter. And when that news broke, the backlash that Zoe faced was unreal. I'm gonna try break it down for you in somewhat of a compact way. I could have made a whole video about this, to be honest, but starting kind of backwards, I'll tell you what the internet actually knew at first, so that maybe you can feel some of that outrage they felt, and then I'll tell you what sort of happened in the background. So basically, Zoella releases this book, which she introduces as her new book. And she sells all of this by saying that, like, there was this promotional video that she made with Penguin, and she said, like, I've been a big lover of reading and writing since childhood. And I specifically I'll throw in this clip of her saying this sentence because I think this is what really threw people for a loop.
In 2009, I started my very own blog. I then went on to do YouTube videos, and somehow that then led me on to being able to write my very own novel.
But glossing over that for now, Zoe, she went on to speak about how she felt like it was vital to integrate issues into this book that a lot of tweens and teenagers do find themselves facing. She said that Girl Online covered friendship fallouts and boy drama in school life, even touched on the topic of anxiety, which obviously Zoe does have real world experience with. And she said she wanted to like normalize those issues. So it's not that Zoe was like, yeah, no, she wasn't exactly upfront about the fact that she did receive a significant amount of help, if you could call it that, I guess, to write this novel, which I'm not sure if that was like a marketing decision that was in her hands. But either way, she did kind of feed this like false narrative to, in particular, I guess, her younger viewers, you know, the ones that would have been the target demographic for Girl Online. And I do kind of think that if the launch acknowledged, if she was like, I got help to write this because it's okay to ask for help when you need it, I think it probably would have been an easier pill to swallow than, because she said like, I'm writing a book in the build up to this, and then it came out and she was like, I wrote this book, you really can do anything if you put your mind to it. And then it came out that she didn't really write the book in the honest sense of the word, and that didn't go down well, you know. And although again, I'd imagine that these marketing choices, they were made because Zoella and Penguin probably had no intention of ever announcing that Girl Online was a ghostwritten book. I don't know. Or like maybe they just thought that some people would know and some people wouldn't. But I don't know. Imagine living a lie like that. I couldn't do it. I'd spill my guts. I'd be like, guys, no, I didn't. Someone would be like, you wrote such a good book, and I'd be like, no, not me, I didn't. Although, to be clear, because I should be clear here, hiring a ghostwriter, it's not some like shady, illegal, unethical thing to do. It's not. Because writing a book is a major undertaking, and it does oftentimes involve a team of people. And there are plenty of individuals, right, who have stories to tell, but they might just not have the writing chops to put it together themselves. And then on the other side of the coin, there are plenty of passionate writers who are more than willing and able to work with those people to bring their stories to life, if that makes sense. I found this website, it was called jwghostwriter.com, and they said estimates range anywhere from 50% to 80% of best-selling non-fiction was written with the help of a ghostwriter. A good rule of thumb, if an author of a book is someone famous and busy who is not known for being a writer, chances are they used a ghostwriter to help them write their book. And I think they're largely referring to autobiographies there, given the non-fiction disclaimer. But ghostwritten fiction isn't unheard of. Like the Nancy Drew series, they were all written by Carolyn Keene, except they weren't. They were actually written by a collection of ghostwriters over the course of the series, but they were just all advertised under the name Carolyn Keene, I guess, for like consistency. And typically what happens, not that I know anything about this really, but what I gathered is that the person that ends up with their name slapped on the cover, they'll provide their chosen ghostwriter with a plot. Say, they'll give them the character profiles, the ideas, all that jazz, and then the ghostwriter will effectively work with them to like put the pieces together in a way that they both see fit, which I think that's exactly what Zoella and her ghostwriter, who her name was Siobhan Curran? Siobhan, how do you say that? Siobhan or Siobhan? Oh my goodness. I've just realized I've never, Siobhan? Sorry, what was I saying? Siobhan. This whole thing was actually quite distressing for her, which is sad. She specifically didn't want to be a public figure, right? But then there were people reaching out to her all of a sudden spouting these total untruths, like people coming at her real angrily for some reason, going off about like, oh, you only worked on Girl Online because you want to become rich and famous, which is bizarre. Like, that's a jump, right? But either way, Siobhan, she ended up releasing a statement on her blog on the 10th of December 2014, and it read, people who know me know how ridiculous that accusation is. But for those of you who don't know me, here's what I think about wanting to become famous. It's a hollow and dangerous dream. Far better to build your happiness on the rock-solid foundation of love. Love for yourself, love for others, love for what you do. I love books. I love writing books, and I love helping others write books, and I love especially being involved in the creation of books that help others, books that deal with real and serious issues such as cyberbullying, ironically, homophobia and anxiety. And she went on to clarify that her motivation for accepting this job to work on Girl Online, it actually revolved solely around the opportunity that she was presented with by Penguin and by Zoe to basically help bring a storyline to life that did address these serious issues. It was the idea that Siobhan could be involved in delivering those messages to Zoe's immense fan base that she couldn't pass up on, right? That was something that she was passionate about. It's something she wanted to do. And she mentioned some issues with like the management of the project that she couldn't disclose, but she did say, she insisted that they had nothing to do with Zoe. She said, I've seen firsthand how caring and considerate Zoe is. I've been very impressed with how she finds ways to use her completely unexpected fame to help others. And Siobhan went on to say that she remained proud of the work that she did with Zoe and with Penguin to produce Girl Online, and she was happy with the outcomes that they achieved together. Like the record-breaking sales, the uptick in young people that were excited to consume a book, she was chuffed with that, and then also the fact that it did contain helpful materials for those readers, and there were people coming online and saying like, this was so great for me to read. She was really pleased with all of that, but she said, I did not invite any of this attention upon myself. I'm not remotely interested in cashing in on someone else's fame. The thought of doing so turns my stomach. This may seem hard to believe in our current celebrity-obsessed society, but I'm not really interested in fame. Full stop. And her closing thoughts read, I think it would be really healthy to have a broader debate about transparency in celebrity publishing, but please don't blame Zoe personally for a practice that has been going on for years. I really hope that once the storm settles, people will focus on the serious issues at the heart of Girl Online. And as much as I hope that Siobhan's statement quelled some of the negative chatter that she was receiving personally, like what was reaching her, because that's ridiculous that it even was in the first place. The internet is such a strange place, isn't it? I will say that it didn't do much when it came to quelling like the wider narrative around Girl Online. I don't think anything would have, to be honest. People were just taking it and running with it, and it all became quite overwhelming for Zoe. I think this whole debacle did, probably partially because the whiplash she would have felt would have been insane, because she went from such a positive response to this like immense hatred. But both she and Alfie, they tweeted that they'd be stepping away from the internet for a few days to basically recalibrate, which is fair enough. But thoughts on this one? Zoe didn't do anything wrong by enlisting the help of a ghostwriter at all. And even though she didn't have to, the acknowledgements in Girl Online, they shared thanks to everyone at Penguin for helping me put together my first novel, especially Amy Alwood, who was her editor, and Siobhan Curran, who were there with me every step of the way. So she did actually recognize in that sentence that she was not the only mind behind Girl Online, but it was the public, like, I guess in this case, Zoe's use of a ghostwriter, it did come off as a bit ingenuine and a bit icky because of the way it was brushed under the rug in that promotional material that was released, like that video of her talking about the book where it just wasn't clear. And I guess that either way, you know, some people would be miffed, like aspiring writers would probably be a bit like, ugh, because this famous person who like didn't care enough to write their own book was offered a book deal because of her unrelated ventures, and that's got to sting a little bit. But that wouldn't have been the end of the world for Zoe in the way that this was. Because the reason this whole thing spiraled, I think, and it's quite obvious in hindsight, is because of how, like, betrayed Zoe's fans felt when they realised that she was selling them a lie, especially young fans. I don't know, like, these people felt deceived. They felt like for the first time Zoe was seeing dollar signs rather than seeing, you know, friends when she looked out into her audience. It felt like a cash grab. An article entitled Zoella, Yes, Using a Ghostwriter Matters When Your Whole Brand is Built on Being Authentic, detailed that further. They said that Zoe's child fans would have believed her wholeheartedly when she said repeatedly that she was writing a book. I'm not sure what you'd say otherwise, considering Zoe's involvement. Like, I'm involved with writing a book. I don't know, but the whole argument was basically that the idea that Zoe wrote the book was what drove a lot of sales from her young audience, and it was out of deception because she didn't write the book. But then essentially what happened behind the scenes is that Zoe was approached by Penguin, like the publishing company, not the bird. Well, this is my understanding anyway, based of what I read. But anyway, it sounds like the CEO of Penguin, his name was Tom Weldon. He was approached by his teenage goddaughter, and she was like, a book written by Zoella would go crazy, goddad. All the other YouTubers are doing it, which is not even me paraphrasing, by the way, like that was a completely imaginary sentence. But either way, Tom listened to his goddaughter and he was like, wow, she probably knows what she's talking about. And so Penguin offered Zoella a book deal. But Zoe wasn't a born and bred author, was she? And she was also quite a busy lady. So the predicament became, how could they make sweet, sweet dough off of a Zoella book deal if Zoella couldn't write a book? But what Penguin said was, they said, as publishers, our role is, and always has been, to find the very best talent and help them tell their story and connect them with readers. Talented YouTube entrepreneurs such as Zoe are brilliant at understanding and entertaining their audience. For her first novel, Girl Online, Zoe has worked with an expert editorial team to help her bring her characters and experiences into a heartwarming and compelling story. And fair enough, that sounds, yeah. But Zoe also released a statement. It read similarly. She said, thanks for all the positive feedback about Girl Online, and for the doubters out there, of course I was going to have help from Penguin's editorial team in telling my story, which I talked about from the beginning. Everyone needs help when they try something new. The story and the characters of Girl Online are mine. I want to thank all of you who have taken time to support the book. And in the end, do people forget about this? No. This was definitely another defining moment in Zoe's career. But actually, before I even continue on that train of thought, in 2017, I know I'm jumping ahead, but this is just weird. The Guardian released an article entitled Zoe Sugg, the vlogger blamed for declining teenage literacy, which my eyes couldn't even roll back far enough to acknowledge how I felt about that the headline and honestly the entire article, but I wanted to mention it to highlight the fact that people simply will not let go of like this. It was a pretty minuscule scandal in the grand scheme of things. Nobody was really severely hurt, and yet like 3 years later there were still people writing these big long drivel articles. Oh, anyway, back on track. Did people forget about this? No. But did it ruin Zoe? Also, no. Someone wrote an article, it was entitled In Defense of Zoella. It reads, digging around with barely concealed zeal, they have unearthed that the book was ghostwritten and made it a big Sunday media story. The subtext of these stories is very much to belittle her achievement. Zoella's success seems to have irked people because she is only a vlogger. She is only 24, and most of all, her sudden appearance as if from nowhere. So basically, bitter internet users continued to despise Zoe for being, I don't know, hip with the youths, the fashionable youths or something. I don't, who knows. Zoe's fans and Zoe herself, they moved on to new horizons, which included being chastised online by a police officer for recklessly vlogging while driving. So not the greatest horizons. But Zoe, yeah, she did. She took her hands off the steering wheel, both of them. She like stared into the soul of the camera lens instead of watching the road. And this, I feel like, should have been a slightly bigger deal than the whole ghostwriting scandal. Do you know what I mean? Because the message of please set a good example for your young fans and pay attention while you drive so that you don't kill someone, I feel like that's a little bit more beneficial than the message of like ghostwriting bad, lying to fans evil. But this whole thing ended up being more forgettable, unfortunately. Like, I don't know if anyone remembers Zoella for this over the Girl Online thing. But regardless of all the hot water that Zoe was suddenly finding herself in, her bank account must have still been looking pretty good, because she and her partner Alfie, they were able to purchase a $1 million home in Brighton. I don't know if you could, it was a mansion, it wasn't really a home, it was a 5-bedroom mansion, and they dubbed it the Zalfie pad. But disappointingly, and this really is disappointing, there were fans that decided that it would be appropriate to just like pop by the Zalfie pad and, you know, give them the housewarming gift of peering through their windows like creeps. And so like Zoe and Alfie, they put out tweets in an attempt to like discourage their child fans and their willing parents from partaking in this behavior because it's wrong. But their tweets weren't particularly effective, which is like insane. It's all insane to me. But there were parents that, think about it, parents got in their cars with their children, drove them to this random house, walked onto the property, and then they were like propping their kids up onto their shoulders so that they could look through the windows and watch Zoe and Alfie just like existing in their own home like they're zoo animals. I really think it's a shame that public figures are subjected to that, and I know that it's sort of like, I don't know, there's a split online where it's like, oh, you sign up for it, but I really don't. Whether you're famous or not, I think that you're entitled to privacy, but I understand that not everyone agrees with that 100%, or they just like accept it as a fact and they're like, oh, whatever. But I don't know, it makes me uncomfortable. Either way, this is kind of random, but in 2015, well, I think that throughout most of Zoe's career, she was represented by like the Gleam Futures talent agency, but then I read that she joined forces with this, it's now defunct, but it was called Style Whore, and it was a marketing company, and Style Whore's mission was to use their brand relationships to like connect talent with businesses in order to optimize revenue. So basically they made brand deals happen between creators like Zoella and Joey Graceffa and Chloe Lucasiak and Ashley Tisdale even, and businesses like Maybelline and Sephora and Macy's and Walgreens and Neutrogena. They helped influencers influence is what Style Whore did. But I don't think Zoe lasted long under their wing, and Style Whore also didn't last long. I just, see, I wasn't going to include this, but then I was like, wait a minute, this is kind of a funny little sidetrack. So the Style Whore CEO, she ditched the company in favor of launching an AI startup, and then a couple years later, maybe like the next year, I can't remember, a former executive got convicted of embezzling $22 million from Style Whore because he was a professional poker player, so he did that to like pay off some of his professional poker debts and then also like personal debts. That's a whole nother story. I just thought that was a fun little tangent. But anyway, Zoella continued to agitate certain members of the general public with her fickle, shameful YouTuber success when she starred in the comic relief edition of The Great British Bake Off in 2015. She starred alongside Gok Wan, Jonathan Ross, and Abby Clancy. I know who Jonathan Ross is. I don't think I'm British enough for the rest of them, but they were there to raise money and awareness for Red Nose Day. Oh, how dare she? But I do kind of, to be fair, I know this is a bit of a side tangent, but I do kind of understand the backlash that YouTubers got for being YouTubers back in the day now, because I can kind of look at TikTok stars with that same sort of like old man shouting at cloud outlook, because it's like, what do you do? But I think the thing is, like, even though I might not get it entirely, I think it's silly to disregard something that you don't understand as being like, oh, it's unremarkable or it's worthless. And also that year, 2015, there were these like uncanny wax figures of Zoe and Alfie that were unveiled at Madame Tussauds, which is either brilliant or creepy depending on your outlook there. But either way, I do think it's cool. Like throughout this all, I've just been thinking it's cool that vloggers, like YouTubers, are being recognized by and included in major attractions and events, just like mainstream media. It's kind of cool. But about how it happened in the first place, there was an operations host that did an AMA on Reddit, and they said, we have a survey at the end of the attraction where people can submit suggestions for who they want to see, which is how Zoella and Alfie got made. So it was like fan suggestions. Really pays to have a dedicated fan base, right? And then fans were involved in the process the whole way through, so they were able to vote on details like what color should Zoella's lipstick be, and like what t-shirt should Alfie be wearing? And Zoella and Alfie were reasonably involved in the process too. Everyone seemed pretty happy with the result. Well, everyone that cared did. Like a 12-year-old fan, they were quoted as saying, it's absolutely amazing. You really feel like you're sitting there next to them in their room, even though you're not. And then their 16-year-old cousin was also there. They agreed. They said, I watched their vlogs every single day. The figures were startlingly realistic. The second I walked through the door, I just couldn't believe it. But of course, there was opposition to this as well. There really is two sides to every coin. There was literally a change.org petition that I came across. It had like, I don't know, like 29 or 39 or something voters, signers. And it was entitled, Stop Zoella Sugg. Zoella Sugg, or because her name's Zoe, is it like Zoella? Stop Zoella Sugg and Alfie Day's waxworks at Madame Tussauds. And the creator of the petition, they lamented, they have completely ignored actual influential people such as Malala for these two randomers, one of whom claimed the praise for a book they mostly didn't write, and the other who just blatantly copied Wreck This Journal and then had the cheek to make a second one. Other than that, what have they done? I mean, seriously, it's supposed to be a place filled with influential people, and they are not the most influential people, which is a great sentiment from the creator of that petition, because as we all know, it is necessary to tear people down in order to lift others up. Preach, sister. Moving on, Zoe, once again, she won the Nickelodeon Kids' Choice Award for UK's favourite vlogger in 2015. She's got a lot of like double ups. Where'd she keep them all? But when she won that, she was in competition with like half of the Brick Crew members, including her boyfriend, and only them. Like, they were the only options. So no matter who won, they all kind of won. Although Zoe probably was the most popular member of the Brick Crew, I feel like, by the number of fans that she had. Because there was like a Rolling Stones article I read, and it said, commodifying your friendships is difficult. Butler, Marcus Butler, one of the Brick Crew, he said he felt weird about placing Zoella in his thumbnails for clicks, even though the crew joked about it together. But really, just thinking about it, it's wild to consider how big of a deal all of these vloggers were back then. It was a whole thing. But then what else happened in 2015? Zoe, her channel hit 9 million subscribers, which is nuts. And also in 2015, Zoe fulfilled her 2-book deal with Penguin. She released Girl Online on Tour, which she actually wrote without the help of Siobhan or any other ghostwriter. She did it just with her editor, Amy Allwood. And Zoe basically said that, like, embarking on the journey of becoming an author, it was very daunting, and especially, like, you're not given much room to start something when you're already a public figure, because people are going to expect you to release something good. So she couldn't have gone and written a shit book. Like, that wouldn't have been a good look. And she also couldn't have taken years, because, like, you never know when YouTube, like, when you're a really, really big name, you don't know when you're going to drop off again. It could just happen tomorrow. So you kind of have to just push it out. But anyway, Zoe basically was like, I was able to learn enough along the way in the journey of writing that first book that I could approach the second book myself. And supposedly, of course, I haven't read these books, but Zoe's voice did shine through more in the second edition. People were saying it made it feel more authentic, like the mentions of mental health and stuff like that. They were like, well, coming from Zoe's voice, it makes sense. And also she had this like chippy sort of, or chipper, I guess is the right word, chipper tone that came through in the writing. Charlotte Runcie, I saw her review of the book that she wrote for Telegraph. That concluded, if this one is her true debut, she has every reason to be proud. So that's a pretty glowing review. Now moving on to 2016, Zoella Beauty at this point still going strong. The Zoella channel hit 10 million subscribers that year, insane. That's a crazy milestone. She also featured on the cover of the Cosmopolitan magazine. That must have been pretty cool for her. Big win. And that year, Zalfie actually, they left their Zalfie pad to move into an even bigger, even more expensive mansion in Brighton, which does seem excessive to me, but I guess having a lot of money probably gets boring if you're not making huge purchases with it, so get it, I guess. But I just can't imagine like having that many rooms to furnish and clean, to heat. Ugh. Sounds terrible. But Zoe, she did run into a few controversies in 2016. For one, there was word making the rounds online that Zoe was making like £50,000 a month, which would explain the house upgrade, wouldn't it? But I don't know if that's true or not. Either way, she probably was making a lot of money, and it's insane to think that she went from like, at one point she was trying to convince her dad, like, no, YouTube is a viable career, and then now she's doing that, like. And then when Zoe was asked if she was rich, she said, yes, in happiness, and then she went on to say, she said, I don't know what constitutes rich. Obviously, I earn more money now than I did 4 years ago, and more than I ever thought would be possible for YouTube to provide, but I'm not driving a Lamborghini. But she did co-own a mansion worth nearly £2 million, so take from that what you will, I suppose. And then 2016 is when things start getting a bit mind-numbing, admittedly, because it's just like so much stuff happened where I was like, how is this even a scandal? How is this even a thing? Like, there was this whole thing about Zoe being accused of cheating on Alfie because she posted a picture in which their friend Mark was sitting in between them in a car. Wildly inappropriate of Zoe to do, obviously. The flags are beyond red. The flags are lava. This is a bit ridiculous, right? Zoe literally put out like a statement in the comments. She was like, I'm so disappointed with so many comments on this photo. Mark is my friend. That's it. She said, he's also Alfie's friend. It makes me sad to think that if he had a vagina, you'd probably feel differently. Boys and girls can just be friends without any other feelings. So that's fun stuff that she had to say that. Oh, and then next, really negligible drama. There was this weird Snapchat incident where she shared a photo of herself laying in bed with like a t-shirt and Calvin Klein undies on, and some pearl clutches. They cried, think of the children. So Zoe, she had to release a statement where she was like, I hope one day we will live in a world where promoting self-love and body confidence won't be sexualized or shamed. And looking at the photo, like, oh, good God, I can see her upper thigh. Oh my God, that is so scandalous and raunchy. Like, I mean, personally, you can probably tell I'm not really concerned by the photo. I think it's a bit silly. Like, because hearing about it, I was like, oh, well, that sounds inappropriate considering the age of her fan base, like the typical age. But now seeing the photo, like, I don't really see any ulterior motives in that photo. I do think, what I will say is I do think those, like, you know, the public figures that have Snapchat stories where they just share every single intimate detail of their life, I do think that's weird. I know they get paid a lot of money for it. It's weird. In my opinion. So, like, in my mind, it's weird that this photo exists at all, that it was, like, posted on a Snapchat story, that it was intended for public consumption. But as far as the actual basis of the argument that people made about the photo, where it was like, oh my goodness, that was too much, too sexy, I think it's, yeah, silly. I do really enjoy, though, I was quite amused, when I found the Zoella Lifestyle Tumblr blog that jumped right on the opportunity to, like, share these undies with the rest of the fan base. I thought that was crack up. Take every opportunity you get, girl. And there was this BBC article all about it, and it read, many of her fans also got behind her using the hashtag #WeStandWithZoe, and they put up photos of themselves in white t-shirts and pants. Oh, how the user have been corrupted. How disappointing. The BBC really didn't take this seriously either, by the way, which I guess checks out for a news company called The Big Black. I'm joking. I'm sorry. But the article, it concluded, she also posted this alien eyes pic, but nobody seemed to mind that, which, thank you for focusing on the real issues, BBC. My camera is dead, so I think I'll return tomorrow. See you then, bye. Hey, it's the next day. Back and better than ever. Let's start talking about Zoella again. We're in 2016. We already spoke about a couple things. The next thing that I found was, there was a Telegraph article. It was written, I don't know who it was written by actually, but it basically gave a big thumbs down to Zoella's book club. And they were like, you know, Zoe is encouraging teenagers to read, which is good and all, but the books contained sexual themes in, like, maybe a way that wouldn't be ideal for a teenage reader, even though I'm pretty sure the books were marketed to, like, young adults. I'm not really sure. Basically, they shaped their point out and they were like, what did they write? They said, the Zoella Book Club is a chance to educate young women about the realities of having sex for the first time in a way that they'll be receptive to because their heroine's name is on it. But instead, that influence is being used to re-establish the same tired old myths. Losing your virginity has to be perfect. You're a slut if you do it too young. You're a prude if you wait. It changes you forever. Which, like, I see their point. I do. I actually think that's fair criticism. I don't know if it should be heaped onto Zoe's shoulders necessarily, but it definitely feels odd for books marketed to teenagers to put such a huge spotlight on the importance of your virginity and like the shame of losing it. It's not really, if they don't do it in a way that's productive, it's not really ideal. But then obviously that is something that teenagers experience and think about, so it does have its place in literature. But I don't know, I haven't actually read any of the books that Zoella recommended, so I can't comment on them specifically. All I know is the quotes that have been up on the screen, but I thought that was worth a mention. I don't know. And then, aside from controversies, but still on the subject of books, because Zoella, I don't know, she was becoming quite the author. She must have just exceeded Penguin's expectations, because she actually went on to release a third book in her Girl Online series. It was called Girl Online Going Solo this time. And that was interesting because I heard that she initially was signed to like a 2-book deal. So a third book is, I mean, hopefully that means that Zoe was enjoying the whole like writing venture that she was undertaking. But all of her books, to be fair, they all seem to be pretty similar quality. They're all sitting at like 3.5, 3.77 was the very particular number I kept seeing. That many stars on Goodreads. So I don't know, the reception to her stories remained pretty even over the course of Girl Online's stint. And I'm sure there were like some desperate readers that were like, I need to know what's happening with Girl. I need to know what's happening to Girl Online. So I'm sure they were appreciative of Zoe's efforts there. Actually, 2016 was a very eventful year, I didn't realise, but Zoe also launched something entirely new, entirely original in 2016, and it was her lifestyle collection. And basically it consisted of homeware items. She had like scented candles and these slogan cushions. And then she also had stationery in there. And the products were all based around that rose gold look that was really, really popular back in the day. Well, back in the day, oh my gosh, we're not that old. It was super popular for a while. And then she also had like some creams and some greys in there, so very kind of neutral with like the pop of rose gold. But Zoe, she announced that these products that she was releasing, that they'd be stocked in Boots and Superdrug stores. I don't know either of those stores, but I'm sure they're big news in the UK. And that was going to be released from September on. Pretty much everything Zoe ever did was at the end of the year, I've realized. I never like heard anything about Zoe until she started popping up in like September, October, November, December. I swear this is when all of this stuff happened. But anyway, this was released, the lifestyle collection released in September, and then fans were also anticipating a Christmas collection that was going to be released closer to Christmas. And the reception to Zoe's lifestyle collection actually seemed decently positive. Like there was an article in the Mirror. It read, well, this was the headline. It said, vlogger Zoella reveals she's launching a new lifestyle range and it's gorgeous. I never know if Zoe's like, I don't know if there's like paid sponsorships or like integrations, do you know what I mean? But she always has like some particular very positive headlines about her stuff. But anyway, someone tweeted as well, they said, you can tell that Zoella put her heart and soul into each and every item. You deserve all the good things. Which I'm not sure that I'd go as far as saying that Zoella like bled her heart and soul into her naps fix everything cushion. I think that might be going a bit far, but this does seem like it was like a highly anticipated business move from Zoe, I guess. And the consensus was definitely that her lifestyle collection made a lot more sense than her book deal did, so fans were appreciative. But this release, of course, it didn't come without its drama. There really is. There's always two sides of things. So a pretty large vocal section of Zoella's fans were like, yay, a Zoe lifestyle collection, woohoo. They were head over heels, right? But not everybody was a fan. There was this Daily Mail article that quipped that there were these critics, right, that were pointing things out that were probably exacerbated by the image that Zoe had developed in a lot of people's minds over the whole Girl Online debacle, where it seemed like her priority was like, it was like a rich person getting richer, and that's what she wanted. And like she was willing to do anything, use anyone to get there. So this Daily Mail article, they pointed out, they said, it must be difficult for Zoella, real name Zoe Sugg, when people don't appreciate the effort involved in releasing a made-in-China hand sanitizer, a Christmas bauble filled with bubble bath, and a doormat. Because I guess, I don't know, like she wasn't hand-making the items and they were generic lifestyle collection items, which you'd expect from a lifestyle collection. I don't know. Either way, Zoe came in on the defense. She was sick of it. She went on a little bit of a rant on Twitter about people's, I guess, like, in her mind, they were probably baseless criticisms against her lifestyle brand. And Zoe said, when will some people realize that I don't just slap my name on things? I work bloody hard at everything I choose to bring out. These things take months, if not years, of careful planning and testing and designing, and every single thing I have, I am 100% proud of and happy with. I don't sit at home waiting for everyone else to do everything for me. I'm way too much of a perfectionist / control freak for that. And although the criticism did seem to bother Zoe. It certainly didn't slow her down. It didn't stop her, that's for sure. Because in 2016, the Zoellaverse products, they really came fast and hard. Like, first it was the book, the lifestyle collection, and then you had Thug Life merch. That was like a team effort by Zoe and Joe. And it was obviously a play on Thug Life and possibly, I guess, poking fun at the fact that they were like very tame and innocent people. So it's like, oh, the Thug Life, whoa, crazy folk over here. I'm not sure, but they had phone cases and sweatshirts and stickers and all that jazz. And they also Zoe and Joe did this photo shoot, like recreating their favorite childhood photos, apparently. I guess they did it for a Thug Life calendar. I'm not entirely clear. I think it's a cute idea. Although, I think it was probably something like a project that they were more excited about than the general public would be, but still really cute. So we'll roll into 2017, which again was quite a notable year for Zoe. Well, they'd start to like taper off after this, so just enjoy it while it lasts. Well, maybe you won't enjoy it because it was kind of a notable year in like the worst ways imaginable. For one, like I said, this all starts happening at the end of the year. She always goes fine throughout the year. It must be like she's got contracts set for the end of the year or something, so everything just starts happening. I'm not sure, but let's talk about the advent calendar. Oh man, this one was a real doozy, wasn't it? So basically what happened was, in preparation for the Christmas season in 2017, Zoe released an advent calendar. It looked like this. This was in partnership with the retailer Boots again, which I just always think of Boots the monkey from Dora the Explorer. Like, if that's not their mascot or like their logo, then I don't want to hear it. This advent calendar, it was released I think in September that year for the low price of £50 per advent calendar. There were 12 doors, but everyone was like, well, that's nothing crazy, right? This is a Zoella product, so it must be pretty lush. And well, not everyone thought that. I'm guessing Zoella's fans, you know, people who would be interested in the product, thought like, oh yeah, this is pretty cool. And then again, not sure if this was like a sponsored integration or something like that, but in September, like the very beginning of September, there was a Cosmopolitan article that was released. It was headlined, Zoella is releasing a lifestyle advent calendar and it's dreamy. And in this article, it read, the 12 Days of Christmas calendar starts on Christmas Day and finishes on Friday the 5th of January 2018, and it's filled with all sorts of festive wintry goodies. Why would it start on Christmas Day? Sorry, that actually really distracted me. I didn't like clock that when I was writing this. I was like, I didn't realize that was weird. Why would you want all the festive stuff after, like, it's New Year's at that point? Move on. Are you meant to use it for next year? Because normally, like, when you buy Christmas stuff for next year, the year before, it's normally cheaper because you get it in like the clearance, so you wouldn't pay £50. Anyway, what did they say? Sorry. They said it's filled with all sorts of festive wintry goodies. According to the product description, it's the ultimate Christmas calendar with 12 amazing and exclusive treats, from beautifully scented candles to stunning accessories, stationery, baking goodies, and other special surprises. In this Cosmopolitan article, it said candles, cookie cutters, stationery, and more? We want one. And yeah, to me, that does sound like it could have potential. I wouldn't buy it, but like for Zoe's audience, people in that sort of niche, that sphere, they would love that, right? But let me just inform you of what was actually behind the doors, and then you can make up your mind for yourself whether it's worth £50 or not. So, because once this calendar launched, impatient people they took it home and they like tore into it immediately. It was like September, so hold your horses, folk. But they were gobsmacked. Hear me out. The gifts included a heavy porcelain bauble, a packet of confetti in cute packaging, 1-star cookie cutter, a mistletoe kisses sticker collection, a little makeup bag, a festive cookie, Zoella candle. It was like 30 grand. 30 grand. It felt like it was worth that much when you paid £50 for the calendar, but it was 30 grams, sorry. A Christmas clementine room spray. Then there was a copper pen, a green pom-pom, a gingerbread man cookie cutter, a polka dot notepad, and a Christmas clementine candle. That was all the 12 doors. That's all they had. A little underwhelming, maybe. But listen, it was branded very well. Like, I can see that Zoe had a hand in making this product. I can see that she was probably proud of the product and she felt like it represented her, because the calendar looked great. The products were cute. It's just that was a load of money to blow on an advent calendar with those, like, only a rich person with like money to spare, or just someone with money to spare in general, not necessarily a rich person, but only they would deduce that calendar was worth £50, because anyone else would be like, oh my god, I just got like £10 worth of stuff for £50. Like, what a waste, I'm poor now. At the time, like, adjusted for inflation and everything, it would have been worth like $50 US, but New Zealand dollars are worth pennies, so it would have been worth $90 in New Zealand. $90? That's my budget for Christmas gifts for everyone for the whole year. I'm not spending that on, like, that's insane. I'd just buy a box of Ferrero Rochers and be on my way. It's the same amount of money. But listen, I'm quite stingy, just in general, and I also wouldn't buy a product from a beauty creator because I'm not really a fan of that sort of stuff, so I wouldn't have been a customer anyway. No loss for Zoe there. But like, still, the general consensus, even from Zoe's fans, was like, this is crazy. And it's strange to me, other people pointed this out as well, that the advent calendar, like, none of the doors contained maybe like a sampler of Zoella Beauty products, nothing like that, which is weird because she had festive lip balms, little roller perfumes, hand creams, like she had loads of stuff that could go in those doors, and people would have actually wanted that, and it feels like a missed opportunity because she could have given fans the chance to get hooked on all these different Zoella Beauty products, but instead she just didn't.
Also, apparently a 12-year-old found a knife in her product. I'm not sure about that though, lol.
But obviously that's not the core, like that was some people's concern with the calendar, but the main backlash came from the fact that obviously it felt so out of touch. Like, in the mind of the consumer, you're expecting to pay like, what, it would be £4 per door, like $7.50 New Zealand dollars per door, and nothing really felt like it was worth that much. Like a little jotter notepad, that's not, no, same with a pen. Like, these are products that wholesalers get for cents. But I get it, of course, you have to like profit on your products, right? There's no point going through the whole rigmarole of making something if you're gonna lose money from it, or if you're gonna like barely break even. I think most people understand that, but I mean, the average profit margin is like 10%, I think. I think it's fair to assume that Boots' profit margin on the calendar, it was more like 50%. Like, they marked it up a lot. Although I'm sure I won't have a grasp completely on all the overhead costs and stuff like that. And I also understand that like Zoella's branding and the aesthetic is the real draw of the product. So, I mean, I could say like, oh, I could have made that myself for a friend if I wanted to, for like half the price, if that. Probably more like a quarter of the price. But that's barely an argument because you're paying for Zoella. So I think that was the mindset behind pricing the product. But the thing is, like, you could take Zoella out of the equation and not really lose anything. Like, yeah, you're paying for a Zoella product, but it's not got her like Zoella Beauty stuff in there or anything. Like, if Zoe wasn't involved and the calendar was just, it wasn't like Zoella's product, it was just product, you would still get the exact same product, basically. So this really was a clear case of like, whoever set the price was like, people will turn their wallets inside out because of the brand name associated with this calendar. Like, because Zoella's name has been slapped on there, we can sell it for as much as we want, which is not exactly how it works, but it is a really common pricing strategy. You're paying for the brand, right? But it does feel like, well, this is kind of what it came off as, right? It felt like a disappointing sign that Zoe had finally lost touch. It felt like she'd lost touch with her fan base, and instead of catering to her fans and offering them a product that would truly benefit them for an appropriate price, so it was like a mutual thing, it felt like she was making a cash grab. That's what it on the surface looked like. Like, it was giving rich person stops understanding the value of money, right? Because if you buy it and you see Zoella's name attached to it and you're like, oh, this is rubbish, and you just imagine Zoe sitting there counting her dollars, then obviously you're going to be left with a bitter taste in your mouth. This was a big deal. There's like a Jackmate video of him opening the calendar that went super viral. It was such a big issue that both Boots, the retailer, and Zoe had to like jump to respond to all the backlash. And Zoe, she addressed it at the end of a vlog. And she basically said that she did care about how her fans felt and that her intention was never to disappoint or to upset anyone. And essentially she expressed, she was like, I was happy with the product. I was heavily involved in the creation of the product, but setting the price, she said it was completely out of her jurisdiction, and that's fair enough. So basically, Zoe said that she felt let down, that she knew now that a lot of her fans had sort of been priced out of being able to buy this product that she put so much care into making for them. Like, she wanted them to have it and they couldn't afford it, or it wasn't realistic for them. And she insisted, Zoe was like, my fans know me and they know that I would never rip them off, not for my own benefit. Do you know what I mean? And to be fair, she hasn't really done anything in the past to demonstrate that she herself is willing to rip people off for the sake of her own bank account. Otherwise, there would have been some bigger scandals or some more scandals around that. She had so many business ventures going. And retailers do set the price of products. It's all very complicated though. It's all very complicated. I'm sure Zoella was making like a certain cut from each sale. But either way, Boots did reduce the price of the calendar. They reduced it by half. They put it on special basically, and they started selling it for £25, which is telling because if you can drop the price by half like that so casually, and just be fine. I don't know, their profit margin was definitely smaller, but it probably wasn't killing them. I have no idea, but anyway, a spokesperson from Boots, they released a statement and they said, "We are sorry to hear that the price of the Zoella 12 Days of Christmas Advent Calendar has disappointed a number of customers. We always listen to feedback. We will be offering the product at half price during our Christmas promotion, where the calendar will be on sale for £25 from Thursday 16th November. So the cries of Zoella fans had kind of been heard. The product was now a little more affordable for what it was, although they were touting it as like a discount instead of just being the actual product price. Anyway, crisis kind of averted. But then, as if things weren't bad enough for Zoe, at the end of 2017, with all the backlash surrounding the like cheap seeming, overly expensive advent calendar, she also got pulled up on some tweets that she twittered back between the years of 2009 to 2012, I think. And they were not ideal, to say the least. They were not good. So basically, they went fishing, they dug up some of Zoe's tweets, and they included these words that are up on the screen, because I want to say them just for the sake of saying them. But there were also a few, you know, full sentences that they pulled up. One went, "I find it funny when gay men spit. It's like they're trying to be a bit macho." And the other went, it said, "How many straight men do you know who whip out a compact mirror to do their hair before an ab sale?" People read those as being homophobic. And then there were these tweets. One said, "Who do these," that's meant to say, "Why do these parents insist on beefing up their obese children? Just give them water and some veg and tell them that's all they're getting." And then another one mentioned a close-up of a fatty eating a Big Mac. No context, by the way, that's all you're getting. I don't know the context. But they were called out because they had people thought they had like a fat shaming tone to them. And a BBC article, they noted this tweet that was made by a user called Ashley Hammond. She responded to the last two tweets that we read, and she said, "Absolutely disgusting, Zoella calling people fat, especially when she claims to get upset when people would call her skinny in the past. How hypocritical can you get?" So yeah, not good, not great, not a good look. Zoe did respond to this general chatter around her old tweets. They're deleted now, so I can only read it from the BBC article. And what she said was, "I've seen a few of my tweets from 7-8 years ago floating around, which I have now deleted, using words like those words and other words I wouldn't use now as part of my language." She said, "Obviously that's not who I am today, and I'd like to think that I'm a little older and wiser. I'm not perfect, and I've never claimed to be. I'm only human." And listen, to be fair, as human beings, we do judge other people. Sometimes we judge them inaccurately or ignorantly. That's normal. But what's not normal, I feel, which has become more and more typical in the modern age, is the fact that people are able to put these they half bake a thought, and then they take them out of the oven and they serve them up to just the internet. They're like, I'm gonna give millions of people the opportunity to read this silly thought that went through my brain. And do I think that should go unpunished or unrecognized, unnoticed, if you will? No. I don't think it should be swept under the rug, because there needs to be that dialogue around this is why this isn't okay or isn't quite right to say. But I don't think that necessarily the right thing to do is to gather this army of internet warriors to frenzily cancel this person, cleanse the online space of their presence. I don't think that really benefits anyone in the long run, because people should be held accountable, yes, but I think most people are also capable of redemption when they're given a second chance. And I think you would really be hard pressed to find a person who hasn't said something wrong or inappropriate in their entire lives, or especially in this case in their late teens, early 20s. I'd imagine that most people have said something that they regret, and yet most of us are functional members of society. We're not necessarily inclined to do or to say things that we know are going to hurt or ostracize people. So even though what Zoe said was wrong, it was unpalatable, and of course a significant amount of time passing doesn't erase a wrongdoing in itself. You have to actually show that you've changed. I think that the fact that Zoe has never had an incident again like this in her entire public life is probably a testament to her character more than those few tweets from a couple years ago were. I don't know, humans, we're not the sum of our worst moments, right? I think a real issue emerges when our worst moments just become our normal. At that point, probably take a look in the mirror. You might not be a great person. There was this whole thing that exploded about Zoe tried to paint herself as a saint, but she's really this awful person. I don't know if that was necessarily what I took from the situation, but I feel like that was Zoe's last big thing in the public eye. By the end of 2017, the chatter about Zoe had kind of come to a close. It was pretty much nil. As far as like mainstream media goes anyway, I feel like I just have never in the rest of my life seen like a headline about Zoella or like a video, a really popular video about like, oh my gosh, a Zoella controversy. She kind of fell off the map in my mind, but things have been happening. In my mind, we've covered Zoella's peak now, which was fun to relive, but I am glad we made it through. But now I'm going to break down for you some of the things that kind of happened in Zoe's world in the coming years. And I'm just going to do it quickly as a bit of like, where are they now sort of thing. And in 2018, nothing huge really happened. Zoe had 500,000. No, she didn't. She had 1.5 million subscribers at the time. She had that broad stroke of business ventures that were chugging along. And then she just stopped posting on her main channel. Like mid-2018, she was just done. She hasn't returned since. When you go to her channel now, you just see tumbleweeds and cobwebs and ghosts and stuff is dead. But regardless, she still was doing well. Like her Christmas range performed, honestly, much better that year. It didn't receive any huge backlash, and consumers as a whole, they seemed to enjoy the products that they received from the Zoella Lifestyle and Zoella Beauty ranges that year. Although she did actually, I almost missed this, I almost forgot about it, but she did release a book in 2018. It was called Cordially Invited, and it was basically like a party planning and hosting like guidebook. And some people enjoyed the book, I'm sure, but then a lot of like vocal readers, they were quite unimpressed because Zoe promised simple but impressive DIYs, and they really poked fun at the fact that she delivered step-by-step instructions on how to go for a walk in each season and how to make a ham and cheese sandwich, and also how to use basic manners like saying thank you after you leave a gathering. Yeah, there's a whole article on Vice that's just dedicated to memeing the advice that Zoe gives in the book. And people were saying critical people were saying the book was unoriginal. They were saying the advice can all be found easily online anyway. And someone I saw said that it was like a manual for stupid people. But a spokesperson responded to that criticism. Cordially Invited is intended to appeal to people of variety. I really struggle to say this sentence. I've tried it so many times. Cordially Invited is intended to appeal to people of varied levels of experience. So while there are some straightforward and simple tips, there are also more complex recipes and projects such as baking a 4-tier birthday cake and making autumn wreaths. And they concluded, Zoe has put a lot of work into the book and she is incredibly proud of it, and we're delighted that so many of her fans are enjoying it. And honestly, I don't think it's an issue. You can find everything online. Sometimes it's nice to read a book, so I don't think that's an issue. I think where the issue really lay is that it seemed like Zoe had sort of lost touch on her primary age demographic, because I would have eaten that book up as a kid, to be honest with you, but Zoe's audience wasn't really, they'd kind of aged out of that. They were probably bordering like young adulthood at that point. So it just kind of gave, who is this for? You know, like it's not being marketed to kids, but then, I mean, we know how to lay out bread, butter it, and put ham and cheese in it. Do you know what I mean? So it was confusing. And then the next year in 2019, I'm assuming because it was just sitting stagnant, the Zoella channel lost nearly 500,000 subscribers. I guess they just were like, she's not uploading. Why am I still here? But Zoe was featured in a Business Insider article. It was headlined, "The 16 YouTube channels that lost the most subscribers in 2019." And she appeared in there alongside her boyfriend Zalfie and her brother Joe. So that to me reads as if the tides had really changed online at this point. The reign of the Brick Crew was done and dusted. It was over. Although Zoe still had a good amount of commercial pull, it seems. She collaborated with Colourpop that year, and it was a huge commercial success for her. Some fans apparently thought that the colour choices were too boring and too beige, which is kind of ironic for a Colourpop collaboration, but it sold well. And I realised that I may have actually lied about never seeing another headline about Zoe again, because I swear I have a vague memory of this, but basically, in one of Alfie's vlogs, him and Zoe were like play fighting, I guess. He like grabbed Zoe's leg and she screamed help. She screamed it twice loudly. Once she like directed it out an open window, help. And Zoe had a wee giggle about that, but Alfie was like, that's not funny. The neighbour's gonna think something weird is going on. They're gonna think I'm attacking you. Don't do that. But Zoe was like, that's my favourite game to play when we have the window open, lol.
Oh, help!
No, that's not even funny. The neighbours are gonna think something weird is going on. No, that's not funny. That's legit not funny.
Guys, that's one of my favourite games to play with Alfie when the bedroom...
It's literally not a game at all.
When the bedroom window's open.
The bedroom window's open because it's like ridiculously hot in our bedroom, and then Zoe will just like shouting, help. Stop it, Alfie, help. And I'm like, that's not funny. Legit, no. Someone's going to think I'm attacking you.
No, don't say it like that, because then it looks like I'm...
That is what you do.
I've done it like 3 times.
That's one of my favourite games. Don't say it like that.
Yeah,
you started this just not me.
Because the panic in your face is like a fucking shot.
Yeah, because then I'm like, stop, and then they look through the window and you're screaming and I'm like, stop.
And the backlash for that came thick and fast. People essentially were like, why are you joking about domestic violence? It's not funny. So Alfie quickly removed the video. They both apologized. Zoe did it in an Instagram story. This is what it said-ish. It said, there was absolutely no intention of trivializing a serious issue. We were just being silly, but I can absolutely see in hindsight how it might come across to some people. We decided to take down the video so as to not cause any further confusion or upset. Sorry to those of you who felt upset about it. That was 1,000,000% not my intention and not something we would have posted had we known. Which one of my biggest fears is that one day I'll be having a wee squeal and someone will think I'm in danger. I used to think that as a kid. I was like, what if I'm screaming, having fun, and then people think that me screaming is not a big deal, and then when I scream because I actually need help and something's gone wrong, nobody comes to help. But I was traumatized as a kid, so let me know if that's like a normal trait of thought. But and doing that intentionally definitely doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't read as funny. I wouldn't recommend it, so I'm glad that the video is taken down so that nobody gets it in their heads by watching it that that's like a normal or a fun thing to do. Do you know what I mean? But I guess I'm like glad that Zoe and Alfie's relationship is healthy enough that Zoe screaming for help is literally nothing but a joke to them. I suppose that's a positive thing, but yeah, probably shouldn't be posted online, probably shouldn't be done. But then alongside all of that, really big news for this year, Zoe announced that Zoella Beauty was going to come to an end the end of the year and it was going to be done. And the conversation arose again in like some circles that like, oh good, because Zoe's products were ripping off young people and whatever, but there were definitely people that were going to feel sadness and feel loss over this beauty brand because a lot of people were buying regularly from it and they had been for a few years. But Zoe basically said that commercially Zoella Beauty was her biggest success. She dedicated endless hours to the project and she was remunerated quite well for it, but she'd made the decision that she was not going to be renewing her contract with her licensing company. She wanted to explore other avenues and follow her own vision a bit more, and basically what I gathered is the overarching idea was that Zoe had realized that her licensing company sucked. And she wanted out of it, so she dipped. And also, the Zoella Lifestyle brand seemed to become inactive in 2018 as well. They made a couple posts on Instagram. They promised that, you can see the layout here, it says, exciting ings are pinning. But unless that exciting thing was a disappearing act, then I have not seen it. They're just gone now. But Zoe herself, she seemed to be doing perfectly fine in terms of like career and finances. Like she was still vlogging. She even had a team behind her. I think they were mainly focused on managing the Zoella presence online, like the official Zoella.com website and stuff like that, amongst other things I'm sure, but I know they were doing that, and she was like renting an office space for them to work out of. So yeah, pretty good. And generally with like all the closures that were happening in Zoella's businesses, the sentiment amongst her fans seemed to be that they were actually glad that she was sort of picking up and moving on to greener pastures before things got stale, before they went downhill, and they were honestly excited to see what her next venture was going to be. And then 2020, Zoe collaborated with Etsy. They launched a limited edition collection of like lifestyle and homeware goods. They included art prints and greeting cards. And I was like, the idea of a handmade marketplace collaborating with a businesswoman that doesn't make her own products, that confused me initially. But then I found out that they actually partnered with 9 UK-based sellers to like bring the pieces to fruition, so that makes more sense. Etsy users, they weren't all pleased with the partnership because of what Zoe represented. I guess they saw her brand as being like very fast fashion focused and very unsustainable. Like they didn't think that it aligned with Etsy, but life went on. It was fine. And Zoe must have enjoyed writing because she also co-authored a fiction book in 2020 with Amy McCulloch. It's entitled The Magpie Society. And Zoe also hit the big 3-0 that year. Zoe turned 30 in lockdown. What a fun time that was. So even though they were in lockdown, Alfie did make it a special day. They had like presents for her to open, cards for her to read, and he made her like a specially made breakfast with her favorite stuff. Her brother Joe also shared a really cute Instagram post. One thing I will say about Zoe is she is so loved. Like Alfie seems to adore her, and her brother Joe and her seem to have a really stable relationship. Joe has said that he really looks up to his big sister, and it's just like, I'm happy for them. It's so cute. Then in 2021, there was this silly little drama that arose over a post on the Zoella.com website. It was about sex toys, and people were like, oh no, her audience is too young for this. And it's 2021 at this point. Like, Zoe's grown up with her audience. Her brand has evolved. She's not really catering to children anymore. And this wouldn't even be worth mentioning if what I'm about to tell you didn't happen, but this was kind of bizarre. It turns out at the end of, or somewhere in 2017, the Zoella website got added to a GSCE syllabus without Zoe's knowledge or anything, but it was subsequently subsequently dropped after this post about sex toys was released in 2021 because I guess parents realised and they complained that the website was inappropriate for their children. And Zoe, she made an Instagram post in response to everything, just tearing everyone to shreds, basically. For one, she was like, clearly whoever added this didn't do their research because our Zoella website has had mature themes on it for quite some time, and our main demographic is women between the ages of 25 and 35. So no, it's not for teenagers. Which, to be fair, I guess the website, when it was added to the curriculum, it was 2017. I guess it would have been probably more suitable to a younger audience then, but the assumption that it would stay that way forever was definitely misguided. Like, you kind of have to check up on those things. Even Jojo Siwa grew up, so nothing is safe for our children. And Zoe also wrote, she said, although we don't aim our content at teens, I don't think it's a bad thing that it's out there for them to read at all. And these media articles are just perpetuating the fact that female pleasure is something that we should feel ashamed of. That is the very reason that we write about it in the first place. And honestly, I have no complaints. I think it was a bit of an awkward situation, but nobody was really the villain, were they? It was just like, what's going on, you know? And then very exciting, also in 2021, Zoe became a mother. Zoe and Alfie announced their pregnancy in March of that year, and then Zoe gave birth to a beautiful baby girl on the 29th of August of 2021, of course. And Zoe and Alfie, they sort of spoke about this time in their lives on their Happy Mum, Happy Baby podcast. Zoe said that being a mum, it was a phase in her life that she'd been looking forward to forever. She'd always wanted this, and it was just like when everything paused during lockdown, all the commitments and the workloads of Zoe and Alfie, they sort of eased off. They sort of were able to take a breath and realize that actually they were ready. They were looking forward to introducing a new member to their family, and so they went ahead and did that. And then Zoe, she was very real, and she always has been, which I really appreciate, but she basically spoke about how, you know, she had some undesirable symptoms, especially at the beginning of her pregnancy. She's really scared of, you know, throwing up, so that was a concern. And then she also had this constant weird taste in her mouth and just wasn't feeling the best, but then towards the end she had a fantastic time. She really enjoyed the baby kicking, but then postpartum also wasn't smooth sailing for Zoe. She compared pregnancy, birth, and postpartum to climbing 3 mountains consecutively, and no matter how much support you have, you still have to climb the mountains yourself, so it was exhausting. But Alfie was there throughout the entire process being supportive, which did help, and they of course had like familial support, stuff like that. But then about parenting itself, Zoe said that she aimed to be as good of a mother as her mum had been to her, which is really nice. She compared parenthood to being the biggest project that her and Alfie had ever undertaken together. She spoke about how much they were learning every day. She spoke about how important communication and cooperation had become because they were both having to act in the best interest of this shared responsibility that was their child. And Zoe said that being a mum meant to her, it was feeling this immense pride every single day for herself and the people around her, like her partner and her child. She also said that she'd never found more joy in her adult life since having a child. So being a mum, it was really challenging for Zoe, which of course it was. It's a hard thing to do, but it was also overall like a positive step forward in her life. In general, it seemed like life sort of became simpler or quieter for Zoe after she became a parent. Like the fast life of endless projects and business moves and public appearances, it fell to the wayside into the past for Zoe. And she went from being this like it girl, this trendsetter, to just kind of being there. It was almost like, you know how PewDiePie has sort of like semi-retired, he makes videos for fun and they're just chill. It was kind of like that. And it really seemed like everything was shutting down for Zoe. Like in 2022, the official Zoella website became inactive. It was regularly posted on since Zoe began like venturing into this public beauty and fashion space online. So for that to shut down was kind of a big deal. But Zoe said that, you know, she was proud of the website. She just admitted that she wasn't really great at keeping up with the trends and the times when it came to running that bloggy website, and she decided it was just time to give it a rest. It wasn't really the right time for projects for her anyway. She wanted to focus on her family. But then Zoe and Alfie, they celebrated their 10th anniversary in 2022. In 2023, they got engaged, which Zoe looked like she was absolutely fizzing about. Like she looked so happy. There was some conversation around it being weird that they decided to do kids first and marriage second, but that really didn't seem to bother either of them. Alfie had actually spoken apparently about how his parents got married after having kids and he wanted his kids to be at his wedding, and it seemed like they compromised on that fine. And I also think it's a perspective that just boils down to like, what culture are you in? What's your legal system like? What's your personal preference? Because I don't know, like here in New Zealand, completely normal to even not get married at all because you kind of have like legal protection just being in a de facto partnership. I don't know, like it's all very personal. It's still the standard to get married here at some point, but it's just not necessarily like you've got to do this first before this. It's just whenever you want. And I don't know what the laws are like in the UK, but again, didn't seem to bother Zoe and Alfie. They seemed to be quite happy with the choices they'd made. And then the pair introduced their second daughter to the world on the 6th of December 2023 as well. So a lot happened in 2023. Well, I guess not a lot happened, but it just felt big. It felt special, right? But then from there on, nothing particularly interesting has kind of happened in Zoe's career, publicly at least. I don't know what's happening behind the scenes, but publicly it's been very calm. And to be fair, like Zoe was presented with so many opportunities in her mid-20s. She was living beyond her wildest dreams, but it kind of felt like sand slipping through an hourglass, you know, like I can't hold on to this forever. So Zoe was insanely busy and she was going everywhere and she was doing everything and she was trying to capitalize on this chance she was given because she didn't know when it was going to end, and life was passing her by really, really quickly until lockdown. And then she realized, like, this isn't maintainable for me. I want to breathe. I want to be a parent and enjoy life a little bit in a different way. And so Zoe sort of accepted that her priorities just shifted. So even though she still felt like maybe she should be going a bit crazy, do you know what I mean? And still living life to the fullest and taking all of these opportunities by the horns, she realized that she just needs to be okay with the fact that life is slower for 30 Zoe than it was for 20 Zoe, and that's okay. That's the progression of life. She spoke about it in this video that she made in 2023, and she basically said that she was happy to have the opportunity to step back and to spend her time and her passion, her energy on her family instead of her work. And she is in that unique position to just be able to like kick back and enjoy family life. And honestly, I think it's really great that she's taken it. But even with that said, she did speak about how she struggled to navigate parenthood with having a career and with the way that she felt from feeling so accomplished in life and feeling like she was achieving so much all the time to now feeling like she was doing nothing, which in reality she said that she realized that when you're parenting, you're never doing nothing. You're raising a whole human being. And so she needed to be giving herself more credit for that, but it still felt very different. So again, I think it's really cool that she's kept that conversation open because I feel like it is important, especially for possibly other parents, to hear someone else. And this is what Joe said as well, that he always enjoyed coming to Zoe because she was basically just experiencing life a couple years ahead of him, and so she was able to give him really great advice, and I think that is almost the feeling that you get as an audience member of Zoe. But as a bit of a conclusion, Zoe, like I said, is very much like semi-retired at the moment. She does still post on her vlog channel, but not regularly. But when she does, her community does still gather around to catch up with her life. Her vlogs are consistently met with between like 500,000 and 1 million views, which is insane. But that's just a testament to the community that she built and how popular she really was and how likable she really was and is, I suppose. But Zoe has been vlogging for like a decade, right? Unless you count that vlog that she made when she was like 11, 2001, in which case she's been vlogging for a really long time. But now that she's a parent, I wanted to open this conversation very, very briefly because that does sort of complicate things. Because listen, like family vlogging, it's a no from me, dog, as Randy Jackson would say, and it's a no for a lot of people. And I really feel like, as a blanket statement, if your content revolves pretty much solely around your children, that's wrong, I think. But if you're someone who enjoys making content and maybe even gets paid to make content and you just happen to have children, but like your page revolves around you, I don't see an issue with that so much. I think you can definitely balance that. I don't think it's fair to say that you couldn't. And I haven't watched enough of Zoe's recent vlogs to know if she's balancing that, but from what I've seen, it does sort of have the vibe of like, this is Zoe's channel and we're here for Zoe, but we're also seeing her life and that involves her children. But it does, like I said, involve her children. Her children do star in the videos. It doesn't feel like they're the sole focus or like they're performing for the camera, but they are there in the videos. And for me, I guess that would only get uncomfortable. Like vlogging and filming your day-to-day life and stuff like that, it can be very dangerous, to be honest, because for one, it reinforces this like parasocial bond that viewers might feel with creators. And then if they're mentally ill, which I know is like a handful of an audience most of the time, it's not the majority, but there is still the chance that someone will take that parasocial bond too far, and unfortunately you might end up being stalked by someone who knows exactly what neighborhood you live in or exactly what supermarket you shop at because they've seen it in your vlogs and they sort of know when you normally go and stuff like that. So involving a child in that is a little scary. It can be managed, but it's scary. For two, showing your child's face to even like hundreds of thousands of people, with the thought in mind again that like a tiny percentage of your audience probably has less than good intentions. But I don't want to say that none of us can have nice things because of a few crazy people, but it does feel concerning, right? And I don't know, I'm not a parent, I have not been the child of a family vlogger, I really don't know these things, or a vlogger in general, I don't know. And I think that if you have respect for your child as a person, as the person they are now and the person they will become, you can probably let them exist alongside you in your videos without them being a focal point, without really causing any harm. But then I don't know. It's very complicated. And personally, I have no intention of ever vlogging, but I feel like I would blur their faces as just like a final measure of protection. Zoe doesn't do that. I'm not sure what the idea was there. And I know they've been announced and like as soon as they were born they were posted online, so I don't know. From what I've seen, like Zoe highlights some really nice family moments. It's nothing that would be unusual to see in like a family home video or anything. Like I said, it's not like they're performing for the camera, and I don't think that she's recording anything that would be like upsetting or uncomfortable for her daughters to know went out to the public in the future. But it could be that they don't want to be public at all. Like the reality is that they kind of probably have no real grasp of the concept that their mum takes these recordings that she does and she post them online for hundreds of thousands of people to see. Like I don't know how you could comprehend that when you're that little. Like I said, I don't know the right answer to this, but I do think that regardless, Zoe's content does fall on the less egregious side of the spectrum when it comes to like children involved in content. But does that make it okay? Do you know what I mean? Like, should the faces be blurred? I don't have the answers. Let me know what you think, but I just wanted to open that conversation up because it is a conversation to be had. But that's basically all I've got on Zoella. And this was meant to be like a 15-minute segment in a video about the Brick Crew. That just did not happen. I got carried away. I was like learning about how Zoe made such a big name for herself in this like saturated niche of vlogging and beauty and lifestyle, and she built this whole empire around it and everything that happened. I was just so... I got captivated. I was swept away. Thank you so much for coming along on this journey with me. It was very fun and very long. I hope someone commented and they were like, I hope this is helpful feedback. Like, it wasn't mean, but they were like, I would watch every single one of your videos if they were between like 15 and 30 minutes long. And I read the comment and I was like, honestly, girl, same. But I don't know. I feel like that's not my thing. Like when I look into something, I don't want to gloss over details. Well, I do. I still gloss over details, of course, but I like to actually think about what I'm reading, I guess, if that makes sense, because I feel like just hearing things, just because sometimes you watch videos and they're like, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened, and your processing time is just nil. Or they'll be like, this happened, and then this is what the internet thought, and it's just the one thing, and it's like, that feels like the only perspective that you can have, where I don't know, I feel like it's so much more nuanced than that. And I am rambling. I'm gonna start editing this video now. So thank you again so much for being here. I always really truly appreciate your time, and I feel so happy that you show up here. I just can't believe it. But yeah, I hope you're having a lovely day and a lovely time in life. If you're not, I hope that changes for you. It will. Take care of yourself, take care of the people around you, and maybe I'll see you next time, maybe I won't, but either way, thank you, and bye. 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 Hello.
Hello, YouTube. I am a mechanic and I fixed your car.
Oh my goodness. Josh, you're so clever.
We're getting married in February. I don't know if YouTube knows that. And we just bought a house. Don't know if YouTube knows that.
YouTube knows now.
Yeah. And we're expecting...
Oh, expecting what?
A bunch of people to come to our wedding.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Bye. Bye, YouTube. Bye.
Bye, Joshy. Thanks for fixing my car.
That's okay. Bye.
Bye. Love you.